The Interrogation of Hiram Tolliver. Still unconscious, Mr. Tolliver slumped heavily in a shoddy old chair. His hands were bound with rope, his feet tied with some loose string. The kids huddled in a circle, discussing their plan. One thing was certain, they couldn't just let Mr. Tolliver go. They needed to know what he was doing in Luka's house. After some deliberation, it was decided. They'd run the classic good cop, chill cop interrogation. Luka walked calmly to the light switch, flicking it off and on. Mr. Tolliver shook his head, gathering his wits. He looked over to find Luka, who returned a calming grin. Rollo and Beck emerged from hiding to give a timid wave. Luka glanced over to Rollo and Beck, who replied with skeptical looks. Mr. Tolliver exhaled with disappointment. Luka gestured to the corner. Luka looked again to Rollo and Beck. This time they shrugged. Luka began to slowly loosen the binding. Mr. Tolliver gently rubbed his wrists. He edged imperceptibly toward the stairs as he spoke. Before the kids had even noticed his movement, Mr. Tolliver was at the light switch. He punctuated his final words by flicking the switch and rushing up the stairs. Beck darted to the wall and turned back on the lights. It was too late. Rollo confirmed what they all heard. Mr. Tolliver's muffled voice came from behind the door. They looked bewildered at each other. They heard the staccato thump of quick steps exiting the house. The kids looked down in resignation. This isn't how it goes in Hank Atomic. For some reason, they'd always assumed it was up to them to save their town. Luka opened his mouth, hoping to conjure some magical words to make this right. Only a hollow croak escaped. The end. Well, we certainly aren't going to find a grand resolution to our tale locked in a basement. Back to the drawing board. Luka began to respond, but the sky answered for him as the clouds above began to rumble with ominous thunder. Luka surveyed the roiling clouds. At that moment, the heavens opened up, unleashing torrential rain. of the microscope. Luka adjusted the slide with his fingers to get a better look. Luka wiped his hand off on his sweater and gave a nervous laugh. Beck looked down, timidly tapping the ladder with her feet. Luka flicked at one of the toggles. Luka bent down to examine the bouquet of wilting flowers. Judging by the odor, they were well past their prime. He flipped open the attached card. Watch the rivulets of water running down the window. Luka took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. Luka let out a feral scream that echoed into the night. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. Beck brushed off her shirt and straightened up. As abruptly as it began, the storm abated. Beck gave Luka a light thump on the arm before heading in. Chapter 5. Friendly Feud. The air was heavy with the hard rain's residue, the smell of wet things. Despite his dreary surroundings, Luka felt at peace. He'd never shared those details about his dad with anyone, not even Rollo. But it's not like this changed anything. Rollo was still his best friend. Adding Beck to the group would help balance things out. Everything's better in threes. This is what Luka told himself as he headed to the treehouse. The Valentine Mansion, both figuratively and literally. Tolliver heard him speak in this stiff yet gentle tone a few times, and it always meant one thing. Rollo scoffed. Luka stumbled on his words, knowing he'd said too much. Luka became instinctively angry in response. Both boys were now shouting across the distance. Rollo's tone changed to a calm, yet more intense. The words hung in the cold night air. Rollo's stomach dropped, knowing he'd cropped, but it was too late. Luka dug through his old stuff, not even sure what he was looking for. Gran cooed gently from the hallway. Luka just wanted to be alone. He waited to hear the sound of the front door closing. Luka dozed off again. Luka still couldn't bring himself to go out. Besides, if he ran into Rollo, he'd have to actually confront the situation. The Adventures of Hank Atomic. Luka carefully opened the cover and began to read. Rollo had received it for his birthday, a special hardcover edition with behind-the-scenes commentary and bonus art. Rollo cherished it, but asked that Luka keep it at his house. Luka wasn't sure if it was because Rollo didn't trust himself with it, didn't trust his sister around it. or just wanted an excuse to come hang out at Luka's more often. Whatever the reason, Luka didn't mind. But it had stayed right there where Rollo had stashed it ever since. Now, at the foot of his bed, Luka lost himself in the pages. He'd read it all before, but at this moment, it somehow felt sentimental. He was well into issue number 5 when he heard soft footsteps from the hallway. Without realizing it, Luka had pouted away the entire afternoon. He once again felt the weight of it all and allowed his weary eyes to close. Luka stood in a vast black expanse. He looked up at his father standing beside him. Walt was working a straw at the bottom of a fountain glass, trying to collect the last bits of milkshake. "Dad, where are we?" Taking a final loud gurgling sip, his father peered up from the glass. He jangled the straw playfully with a warm smile, then lifted the empty glass as if to point into the darkness. "The source." Luka's eyes followed his father's gesture. In an instant, he was sitting in front of a blazing campfire. Across from him sat a large figure in a yellow hazmat suit. The figure's voice was a scratchy echo. "Well, if it isn't the man of the hour, make yourself comfortable." Luka held his shivering hands over the flame to warm himself. "It doesn't work that way here." Their yellow-gloved hand pointed to the base of the flame. "It's a cold flame. See?" Luka peered at the base of the fire. It wasn't wood that was burning. It was Beacon Pines itself. Tiny buildings, freezing and crumbling as they were consumed by flame. Luka could see small shadows moving in the burning city. People. Luka leapt to his feet. "We've got to help them!" The figure gave a dismissive wave of their hand. "Why waste energy helping people who can't even help themselves?" The figure bent down to examine the panicked crowd as they desperately tried to stop the flames. "They only care about what's right in front of them, not like us." Luka's voice was a trembling whisper. "Us?" The figure slowly stood up, grabbing its helmet with both hands. With a jolt and a twist, the suit, a cloud of torpid mist escaped, slowly revealing the face within. Luka's own face looked back at him, older, worn, distant. The sensation was oddly familiar, as if he'd caught his own reflection by surprise in the mirror. The doppelganger smiled. "I tried to help once." He gestured towards his face. "And all it got me was this." Luka staggered back. "You aren't me." Luka felt a hand catch his shoulder. His father was there again, beside him. "Every choice sets us on a path. This is the end of one of your paths, son." Luka watched his older self shake its head ruefully, its face twisting into a cruel grin. "Welp, Dad, if you wanted him to see this, far be it from me to disappoint." Luka watched in shock as the figure took a confident step forward and plunged into the flames in a flash of cold light. "What does all of this mean?" Luka felt a reassuring squeeze on his shoulder. "Just remember, why we choose matters just as much as what we choose." Luka woke up to see a hazy figure at the foot of his bed, silhouetted in the morning sun. Luka rubbed his eyes. The kind, concerned face of his gran came into focus. Gran silenced Luka with a gentle pat on the leg. Luka took a deep breath. Chapter 6. Through Thick and Thin. Despite Luka's bitterness, Gran was right. He needed to hash things out with Rollo. A big fight changes the nature of a friendship. Whether, in the end, it is for the better or for the worse, all comes down to understanding. If one is not careful, the same familiarity that builds the strongest of bonds can become the wrecking ball that shatters them. Luka emerged from seclusion, taking in the crisp festival air. But the events of the day weren't on his mind. He had to find Rollo. Roxy rolled her eyes, shaking her head. Luka looked down and kicked at the dirt. Mr. Kerr pointed to his grinning mouth. Luka wrapped a twig of thyme around the hook. Some fish have refined taste. Jeff was staring into the distance with a wistful look. Jeff turned to Luka with a furrowed brow, then gave an understanding nod. For a moment, the two now shared that same wistful gaze. suspiciously. Lit with excitement. Kato straightened up and cleared his throat as if preparing to sing. Kato stared at Luka eagerly. There were rarely and simply Luka grabbed Natural Photography, Volume 5, from the shelf. Luka grabbed The Adventures of Hank Atomic. Removed his book from the desk and replaced it with Luka's, turning on. As he slid the book under the purple light, The Adventures of Hank Atomic, Issue 5. Luka clicked his tongue with recognition. Began flipping through the pages, stopping when he hit a glowing word. He continued flipping. Reaching the end of the book, Kato looked up. shrugged, taking a sizable... Luka tongued at his cheeks. He reached into his mouth and pulled out a slip of paper. He shook off the bits of corn dog to read the slip. Luka finished off the remainder. Lumi waved his hands around sarcastically as he began. Rollo sheepishly handed Luka the balloons. Luka threw himself at Rollo, hugging him as tightly as he could. Rollo handed Luka an unopened letter. Luka, some things are going to happen that might be difficult for you to understand. If I am honest, I hardly understand them myself. But whatever happens, I need you to know that I love you. None of this is fair to you. You have already lost so much. We both have. I wish there was a simpler way forward. But if there is, I haven't thought of it. God knows I've tried. Everything I've done, I did for you. I hope someday you can accept that. Love, Gran. Luka folded the paper into his pocket and headed up the ladder. Luka was at a loss for words, but that was fine. Words aren't always necessary. Sadly, this was untrue. A distant rumble shook the treehouse. It was not fireworks. It was something the boys couldn't possibly comprehend. Something as old and cruel as time itself. A shockwave of cold tore through the room. A bitter, unfathomable chill. Before they could react, it encased them in ice. 2 boys, reunited by friendship, only to be cruelly separated by a malevolence beyond reason. And so, our story ends on this melancholy scene. In a silent treehouse turned statuary, in a town brought low by its secrets, sits a pair of friends, alone, together, for the rest of time. The end.